to Shall You Proceed podcast. I have an amazing guest once again with me today. Someone who is incognito, always hidden, but has amazing contact, a fellow podcaster in my podcast family who's always dropping great gems and great information for the world. Independent thought himself, Desmond Price. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on the show today. I really appreciate it.
You are always welcome. You are always welcome. I know you're busy because you're always having content dropping left and right. I love your podcast. I always learn something. Like, man, I didn't think that. I didn't know that. I love that. I love your show quite a bit because you base your things on politics and certain topics, but it's always around social issues in some kind of way, right?
Yes.
So I welcome you. I'm so happy that you're here. So tell me, what was your journey to podcasting? Why did you say, I want to podcast?
For me, it was a little bit different. I mean, I think how it started was, at first, my girlfriend and I just started doing we had our own podcast, the two of us did together. We just did it for fun. I mean, we were talking about sports and movies and TV shows, those kind of things. But then after time went on, this was actually in 2019, I decided that I kind of wanted to do my own because, her and I have just opposite schedules, so we couldn't always do things together. And I really wanted to talk about politics. It was the beginning of the Democratic primary season going on, and there was 3,000 people in the field. So I just really wanted to talk about, what I was seeing, what wasn't being explained well enough, and just I always felt like when I was watching breakdowns of political based conversations, there was always just so much left off the table in a lot of conversations. And I felt like I just wanted to kind of just speak to somebody. And at first I was like, if I get 10 or 15 subscribers, that's cool with me. At least somebody out there will be hearing what I have to say. But then, thankfully, a lot more people ended up caring about what I had to say. So now I, put out content pretty consistently.
Politics, life, you cover everything in between. I love the fact that you're saying something's missing because you are missing something out there. So you're like, I need to add what's missing. So why independent thought? When you think about podcasts or any type of branding, as you know, the title is crucial. It can make or break how you gather your audience, your following, and it needs to make sense. So what made you say independent thought?
I think when I was thinking about a political-based show, for me, the last thing that I wanted to do was just pick a side and then just be that side's cheerleader. I just didn't want that. So the idea basically around independent thought was I am not going to allow one side of the political spectrum to kind of tell me what to think. I'm going to evaluate everyone individually and then give my thoughts there. So it's independent in the sense that it's independent of being in one particular place. So it can be any different thing. And I like the idea that we don't have to have the same ideology for every single just political issue. I think when I was growing up, in high school, I remember I came across a Chris Rock stand-up, and he was talking about how, in his opinion, it did not make any sense that one person could just be one thing for every issue, that it didn't make any sense to be liberal on every issue or to be conservative on every issue. And honestly, that kind of just stuck with me for the rest of my life. I was like, you know what? It doesn't make any sense to me, not to me personally, to be one thing for every single issue. So I like to think of myself as kind of just evaluating every single situation as it comes up, and then just giving my thoughts based on how I feel about it versus how society tells you you're supposed to feel about it, or how a certain political party tells you you're supposed to think about it. So I guess
absolutely
to kind of answer that, fully, I guess I see too many people, when they think about politics, just picking a side and just regurgitating whatever those people tell you to think. And I feel like we're all better than that.
But I think it also stands for being very lazy. Many of us grew up in a generation where you were taught to look and research, find your answer. I know in my house, my mother and dad told me, just don't assume or just take someone's word. look into it, open a book, do your own research. Just don't take what someone says or what they give you as total facts, right?
Right.
Yeah, it may spark your interest. Oh, okay. Because as we all know, there's many sides. And like you said, when it comes to politics, I know I may consider myself a liberal, but I know I'm not all the time. There's some things I'm very conservative on, or I'm like, I may not I may not care about.
Right.
And I think it's hard when you have those definite party lines. When the reality is, everyone really isn't. If they're honest with themselves, if they're thinking independently, they're really not just one or the other. Because if you're too far one way and too far the other way, there's always going to be a big issue. There's going to be a big backlash with it.
No,
Yeah.
I agree with that completely. I think that it's very important to have an open mind when it comes to every issue. I mean, and a lot of times I feel as though how people get stuck, thinking the same way about every issue. I think that largely comes down to the fact that so many people have become disengaged with politics. The word politics has such like a nasty, like connotation to it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
people don't even want to talk about it really, like you bring up anything political and they're like, oh, we ain't talking about politics right now.
Oh, I
And
avoid it. I
yeah,
avoid.
most people
Listen,
do.
for many years, I'm like, religion and politics, I'm not going down that road. Not because I can't speak on it, but the fact is, very few people know how to have a safe space conversation where you listen, I listen. Okay, I hear you, you hear me, and we can walk away and still have respect for each other. It turns into a very ugly situation. And that's with anything now. Very few people know how to have great conversation, great debate, bring up points. Okay, I see you, walk away. I still don't agree with you, but hey, we had a good conversation. I don't know what happened with that. I don't know what happened with that type of model.
I don't know
No
what
idea.
happened with it either, honestly, but I feel like we as a society would be a lot better off if we got back to it. Because, I say this all the time whenever I talk to other podcasters or just other people about this subject. I truly believe that in the case of politics, one of the reasons why things are as bad as they are is because so many people have kind of become disengaged with staying informed, and in that space, people who want to be corrupt are able to thrive because not as many people are watching what they do on a day in and day out basis.
Yep, absolutely. So you have your podcast. You already podcasting with your girlfriend. Schedules, everything like that. That can make or break when you have a co-host. You know what I
Right.
mean? You're trying to align things. So that's probably why I don't have a co-host. I do what I want to do it. And plus, I'm a slight control freak. If it goes wrong, I can only blame me. If it
Right.
doesn't, it's all on me. So if I fail, it's my fault. If it goes well, it's my fault. But when I'm relying on other people and it's wishy-washy, even though it's great energy sometimes, at the basis of just building this, sometimes let me get it off the ground, then maybe bring someone in. Probably not, but So you have your podcast. You want to put out something different that you were hearing in media and podcasting. So tell me, what have you struggled with when it comes to podcasting? How do you stay motivated with it?
Struggle.
Yeah.
That's yeah, okay. I think for me, my biggest struggle is confidence. And I know that may be, a weird thing to say, but
We're going to dig into that.
Yeah, I struggle with my, like, I guess it sounds strange, but I struggle with my intelligence. So it's very important to me that I am putting out something that's coherent, that is, that's structured a certain way, and that is worth someone's time. Because my episodes, especially the ones I've been putting out this season, they're all around an hour long. And so, we're living in a time where people are busy. They got things to do. Not everyone has hour commutes where they're just listening to podcasts. And so if you're asking someone to take an hour out of their week, it has to be worth it. People are investing their time into you. There is no bigger commodity that we all own as people, time, right? And so for me, if I'm asking someone to give me their time every week, I feel like it's important for me to give them something that they should value. And so I try to do my best to kind of create content that's worthy of listening to. And I think while I'm putting that together every week, I'm always second guessing myself. I'm like, does this sound smart enough? Do I have enough information here? Does this argument that I'm making make sense? Did I edit this the right way? Just all kinds of little things. I think I'm my own biggest critic when it comes to these things. So I get really kind of I guess there's a lot of like self-doubt, second guessing, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I always find a way to get the episode out on Monday. So I mean, all that gets put aside eventually, usually Sunday night. But
I think it's natural to feel. I know I harbor a lot of insecurity. I learned about the term imposter syndrome from a mutual podcast friend, Janae, a professional workout. I was like, what? That's me. Oh, what is that? No, I rebuke it. It's like I learned that people see more in me than I see in myself. And I don't know why I cringe when someone gives me a compliment or tells me that, oh man, you're doing a great job. I'm like, because like you, did I research enough about the guest? Do I know enough? Am I asking the right questions? Did I make it worth their while? My biggest thing is I'm honored for everyone to be on the show. And I'm like, wow, you want to be on? Not people that I'm asking, but like they contact me. I'm like, oh, you want to be on the show? Yeah. And I want to give them the best. I want to make sure I highlight them. And I struggle with that every time. Do I sound coherent? Am I asking the right questions? Am I pulling out what needs to be pulled out? Am I making them sound at their best? You know what I mean? And before I hit like publish, I'm like, hope they like it. Hope it's okay. And I don't know if I ever get over that though. I think I like the fact that it keeps me humble. It keeps me grounded, that I'm not so arrogant and full of myself that, I'm doing such an amazing job, that I can't see the flaws in what I'm doing and see that there's constant growth. I don't know.
No, I understand exactly where you're coming from. I mean, I'm a lot more comfortable in this chair than in the host chair. I think I mentioned that to you when you came on my podcast. So I understand exactly where you're coming from. I mean, to be in that chair, you got to make sure that, the conversation's flowing the right way. You're asking the right questions. You are creating a conversation that the people who are listening to this later on, that they're going to want to hear, because I mean, let's call it what it is. I mean, we are living in a time where people's attention spans are shrinking. So, you gotta have the right conversations or people are checking out, right? These are things I think about too when I'm putting things together. I'm like, how do I keep people engaged throughout this conversation, right? Yeah. And so, it's definitely something that I think about all the time. And I think for me, when I think about trying to put together an episode the best way I know how, I like to give people just variety. And I know that, just when I come to your podcast, for instance, I feel like there's always a variety of topics. So I never feel like, it's like the same conversation every single week. That's the one thing I'm always afraid of. I don't want to give someone else like the same conversation every week.
You get a good gumbo over here. Yeah. But that's my fear too, though, that I'm not zeroed in enough. I feel that I'm so broad that what's my niche? What is it? That's my fear that I worry about. What we're talking about before we started recording.
Right.
My big fear is, like, when I ask you why independent thought, it makes sense. I'm drawn to that. Like, okay, what's this person talking about? Then you realize, this is what you're talking about. Even though I have these pillars that I focus on, which are still broad in itself, but that's life. I still wonder, am I reaching who needs to hear this? And also, like you said, people only we have a short attention span. I listen to 1.5 hour long podcasts every Monday and Thursday. Certain ones, like, it's an hour tops. That's my get ready in the morning.
Right.
I get in the vehicle, it turns on. I'm excited. My commute's only 8 minutes to work, so I'm consuming so much. I'm at my desk at work. I have a podcast in because that's how I'm getting information.
Right.
But like you said, I started limiting myself recently to, 35, 40 minutes. That's it. Because they're not going to listen any longer. and I gotta hit it because they're gonna tune out. And should I keep doing that, or should I say, you know what, forget that, I'm going to do what I want to do, and this is going to be for someone? I don't know.
I got to say, I think that plenty of people like the longer episodes. I mean, just looking around at what other people have done, especially on YouTube, some of the biggest YouTube stars out there. I mean, obviously people think of Joe Rogan, for instance. I mean, his podcast will run minimum an hour, usually 2 or 3, sometimes 4. And that's the most, it was, I think, before he left YouTube, it was the most popular thing on the internet. And so obviously there are millions of people out there who will come and listen to hours worth of a conversation if it's the right conversation, right?
Right.
And so my mind has always been like, okay, let's just make sure that if it's going to be a conversation that's long, then it's the right one, that people are going to be here to listen to something that they want to listen to. And I think, varieties, it's a really good thing. I think people who get really bogged down in that whole idea of a niche, I feel like that'll eventually get played out. Niches feel like they're really cool for a little while here, but eventually everyone gets tired of the same thing over and over again. It's the same reason why people don't eat in the same restaurant every day.
That's the fear, because I'm really big on not big on, but I'm mindful of, I like to keep it real mellow. I like to keep it real, like I tell people all the time, I ain't shit. I'm not your wellness advocate. I'm not your therapist. I know great people. I will bring them on the show, but I'm not the one who's going to spew out advice. And that's not me, because I can't build anything on that when that's really not who I am genuine. I make mistakes. I am flawed, but I like highlighting great people. I like putting out people who you may not even hear about and have those great conversations. That's what I like. And sometimes it may be hard hitting. Sometimes it may be fun, but for me to say I'm going to build off of one thing, that will be very hard for me to maintain. I'll get bored. Bored really quick. And then to fail, then I'm going to be all of the news. Erlene said one thing, and if you're out here in these streets acting ridiculous, and I'm like, well, shoot, I said what I said. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Let me ask you.
Yes.
You've been podcasting for a while. It can be stressful. It can be time consuming. It can be draining. You take great breaks, but I don't think you take real breaks. You may drop a season, but I'm thinking you're still recording nonstop. What do you do to maintain your wellness, Mr. Price?
I actually am taking a little bit of a break this time. I mean, I kind of structured it. I was thinking long term. When I talked to you, when we did our episode on my podcast, that was back in January. And I knew that at that time that I was going to end my season in May, and then I would start my next one in July. And so I am, like more or less, I told myself that I would take like 2 or 3 weeks where I did no recording. But I am going to I'll still be on my break here in the end of June, but I will probably start recording the next season's episodes. But, I have been trying to do my best to give myself more of a mental health break, because staying involved in the news all the time, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot, because even when I'm not recording, even when I'm not recording, to have any kind of authority as far as being the host of a political podcast, you have to stay engaged in politics all the time. And so being that person, having to stay engaged every single day and being on top of every issue every single day, because when someone comes to you and they're like, what's your opinion on Israel and Palestine? I'm like, okay, I should probably go figure that out. I mean,
But hell, I don't know yet. Let me go check and see. Yeah.
So I do have to stay pretty engaged, but I have been trying to do my best to just take some time for me, because that is a very important thing. I think, honestly, my episode I did before my finale was called Knowing When to Rest. And I made that episode actually as almost like a reminder to myself. So even though I put it out for everyone to hear, it was basically my way of telling myself, you know what, it's okay to take a break, because, your body, your mind, you need to take breaks, because if you don't, I mean, I could break down the neurochemical like reactions about it, but like stress will break down your body, it'll break down your mind. And so if you might think to yourself that, you're being strong-willed to continuously push through stress and continue to get work done, but the truth of the matter is that rest is equally as important as productivity, because if you really are worried about production, then you have to build in rest into your everyday life, because if you don't, you're going to run yourself down.
Yeah, and it's not healthy. It's not healthy at all. It's really
Yeah.
not. So, because with you doing politics and life, politics alone for the past, let's just say 5 years. Let's just keep it at 5. Let's keep it at nickel. Has been stressful.
Yeah.
And the stress has not lessened at all. And it's hard to discuss politics with your last administration, and even now, without someone like defensively looking, okay, what's you about to say? What can I attack? What can I say? Let me hear the foolishness. And it's like, listen, I'm just going to give you this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How is it that you consume, even though you're taking a break now?
Yeah.
When you're recording, you're consuming a lot.
Right.
And we've seen a lot. There has been political unrest across the world. We've seen brutality, we've seen killing, we've seen violence, we've seen social issues that have been amplified, that have always been here, but
Right.
social media has made it like in your face.
Yeah.
Have you ever regretted thinking, why the hell am I doing a podcast on this shit? Why? Have you had that moment?
Yes and no. I mean, I had that moment about like a month and a half ago where it wasn't that I regretted doing a podcast that was covering the news. I was just more or less asking myself if I had the mental stamina to keep this up.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't the question if I wanted to. I know I want to. It's a question of if I can. And because like for me, when I was first about to start this podcast about a year and a half ago, I was unsure about what I was doing with my career and, like what I was doing just with my financial decisions. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and I asked him, I was just like, man, I think I'm going to leave my job, but I don't know what direction I want to go into. And I just don't exactly know what's next for me. And he just said something so simple to me, but it just like, it's one of those moments where it just like clicked really hard. And he said, just go out and do whatever it is that no one would have to force you to do. I just spent some time really sitting with that. It just kind of just hit me for a little bit. And then a couple months go by and I realized that, in my everyday life, I find myself very much caring about what goes on in the world. And so at no point have I ever not cared about the social issues, the, political issues going on. And so I figured if I'm going to work, I might as well work at something that matters to me. And so I know that no one has to force me to do this. When I get up every day and I work on this podcast, like after my normal job, like it doesn't feel like work. It just, I mean, there's stress to it. There's a lot of time and energy that goes into it, but it doesn't feel like a chore, if that makes sense. It's something that I want to do. It feels, just like fulfilling to me. So yeah, on that note, I'm very much, content with the idea of it. But yeah, it's mentally draining. Of course it is. I mean, having to deal with it all the time. But I think, I'm hoping that as I continue to do this, it'll be something that just gets easier and easier. At least that's what I'm hoping right now. So,
hey, don't know. Can't even reassure you.
Yeah, check in like a year.
I can't tell you. No idea. Because I will say that I podcast independently, and I run the podcast for my job as well. Yeah. So it's in my life constantly. But I will agree that I love this. So losing sleep to do this doesn't bother me.
Right.
But I will take a break and say I will take 4 weeks off just to not even record or do anything. And I'll and I need to do better. My struggle is, am I doing enough to promote, to market? Am I doing enough? Am I doing enough by these guests that I've had, all these 100-something shows that I've had? Am I doing enough to keep pushing their narrative, pushing who they are? Because I'm by myself doing it, but I'm tired. You know what I mean? I'm tired. And that's my biggest thing is I love what I'm doing. I'm blessed to do it at work as well. Luckily, I have it in all of my life that I enjoy it. And I agree with your friend, do what you want to, that you don't feel like you have to, that you enjoy doing it. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah,
That's the biggest thing. Let's get into what you do. We're going to have this part of the show is going to be, this is what independent thought kind of feel. I want to dive into this. You know, this is what we're going to do. Because I know you don't talk about you all the time. You're not used to that. And I don't want you uncomfortable.
No, I'm pretty comfortable. It's just that I think when I am on my podcast, I try to go out of my way to make sure that, you know, kind of like how you're doing, you know, I make it about like my guests. Like when I bring them on, like I'm asking them like, you know, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I've had people come to me and say, you know, you should talk a little bit more when you have a guest on. And I'm like, okay, all right. I'm gonna work on it. I'll work on it.
All right. So we talked about you, how the birth of independent thought happened, which is great because there's always a why for someone. There's always something. You crave conversation, you crave truth, you crave knowledge. So that's where it came from. And you wanted to add something to the market that probably wasn't there, of course. So let's talk about current events because you do politics and life.
Yeah.
And currently right now, let's talk about Black people and what keeps us divided. There's so many things, there's so many buckets with that. For me, I really feel that we're focusing on the wrong things, that we can't get together because we're worried about the wrong things. But I want to hear from you. What do you feel keeps us divided right now?
I mean, that's honestly a great question. You know, I feel as though it kind of comes back to a conversation that we were talking about earlier. You know, when we were talking about the fact that you brought up the fact that you don't like talking about like religion or politics, right? Okay. And so I feel as though, you know, the kind of the staple of your show right here, like bringing back meaningful conversations. You know, I feel as though that is missing in, you know, just honestly, I think that's just missing everywhere right now. You know, I feel like the reason why people are so divided is because not enough people are actually talking about the things that matter. You know, we are having a bunch of quick surface level conversations, and, you know, those things are necessary. I mean, you know, everyone, you don't want to talk about serious things all the time, but, you know, we can't have a situation where we as people are not talking about serious things ever, you know, especially in times like this. You know, I mean, we're only a year removed from seeing the large protest movement go around the country. And, you know, just in the last like few months, a lot of those conversations kind of fizzled off a little bit. And so I don't really foresee how people can be brought together if they're not willing to talking about all the different issues that we face as a society. And that can't really happen if people are afraid to have conversations at all, you know? And so what we really need more or less is just to normalize the behavior of having serious conversations about serious topics. Just my opinion.
But how do you do that? How do you do that when, here's the thing, you know, and this is across the board. All of us, no matter if we look alike or not, come from a different frame of reference in life. Our backgrounds, our skin may match, but our backgrounds are different.
Right.
So I think the biggest struggle, in my opinion, is many of us want us to all fight the same, think the same, and be mad the same, when that's not reality. And like you said, once we can have those conversations together and realize, okay, yes, your background's different, your thoughts are different, but let's try to find some common ground here. You know, common ground is there's issues. So it doesn't matter about my background. Let's discuss what needs to happen. And also realizing how we fight. I may not be a frontline person. That may be you. I may be the one making sure the flyers are out.
Right.
I'm the one making sure I make the phone calls, because everyone's not, some people are great on that podium, are great with that bullhorn, great at that front line, but they're not good at organizing what needs to happen. And if once we realize, here's the issue, here's the problem, here's the fight, okay, what are you comfortable with? Then let's go. But we shouldn't make each other feel bad because one doesn't know, one does know, or you're not fighting hard enough. You don't know what their comfort zone is. You don't know what they're dealing with. That may not be their best place to be because that's not going to have the optimal, results.
Yeah, everyone has a different role to play. I realized that a long time ago for myself. I know that there are certain limitations that I have. There are certain things that I'm good at. And it's not about fitting everyone into that box. So, I mean, I think to answer your question more directly, what needs to change is what people are trying to achieve in some of these conversations. Too often when we do have these conversations, the reason why they get so heated for so many people is because I think people want the end result of every conversation to be, you see things the way I see things. And and if that is the goal of the conversation, then of course we're all setting ourselves up to fail. Because I mean, let's just keep it real. A lot of people, you're not going to convince them over the course of one conversation. You might not convince them over the course of 10. I mean, some people you ain't going to convince them ever. So, I mean, the goal of a conversation, especially a difficult one, should not be, hey, I'm trying to convince you in this moment that you have to see things the way that I see them. It shouldn't be about that, especially when we're talking about things like, maybe like just one issue in particular. We're talking about like police brutality. If we're trying to find a solution to how to handle the police, maybe it isn't as simple as I see things this way. Now I need everyone to see things this way. Maybe it's just like, can we agree that we have a problem? Let's talk about what different solutions may be available.
And also agreeing, well, not agreeing, but seeing, because, I'm pretty soon I'm going to be helping an event on surviving and policing in America. And how do we do that? How do we make sure we get home after an encounter? And what I think the issue comes in is understanding, being willing to understand all sides. And as soon as you say there's good, people get defensive. Or what did you do? People get defensive. Or what you should have done. Yes, but let's pause and have the conversation, because now we're fighting each other and that's not helping anything.
No.
At all. And realizing that, and I guess for me working in local government, knowing that there's so many different things that has to take place, that everything's not going to happen overnight. That's virtually impossible. So you have to have people who can talk to someone and say, listen, we're working on it. This is what we're doing. And it may not be seen in your lifetime. And we have to realize that. It may not happen in your lifetime, but we have to plant the seeds to get the ball rolling so it can happen in our lifetime. Once we understand that, or just have that conversation. And I think the biggest issue with that is when they had the Asian hate bill hit, and you have Black people like, well, I mean, what Asian hate? Hey.
Yeah.
Hey, so let me ask you this. Let's discuss our current president.
Yeah.
And I know you put a post up on your stories about, are we happy, or how's bringing it up? If we're happy, but how do you feel right now? Now we're only in month 6. He's only been doing it 5 months. I don't even count January because January was a shit show. So I'm not even going to count January, and there's still residuals behind that. So what are your thoughts on his platform he ran on, and now what's happening? What do you think is the deal, or how do you feel he's doing right now, in your opinion?
Okay. Let me sit up for this one. Joe Biden is the beneficiary of being the president who came after Donald Trump in so many different ways. I mean, because the bar is so low that anyone could have walked into that office and they would have been considered to be a good president, right? I mean, honestly, let me just keep it real for a second. I mean, when the last thing you see from one president is they're thrown off the internet and they're being impeached for the second time and people are calling for them to go to jail, and they just led an insurrection on their own governments. I mean, it's kind of hard to do worse than that, right? And so when you ask the question, how is Joe Biden doing? Well, the first thing you're going to do is compare him to the last president. And you're like, well, he's doing better than that guy. So, but I guess to break down specific details, Joe Biden ran on so many different platforms about what he wanted to do. He ran on $15 an hour minimum wage. He ran on wanting to create a public option for our healthcare system. He ran on wanting to do police reform. He ran on wanting to solve the crisis at the southern border. He also ran on wanting to eliminate some student debt. And I got to tell you, when it comes to those topics, he's failing at all of them. So he had the chance to institute a $15 an hour minimum wage back in March. He decided to not do it, and he blamed it on a technicality. He said that there was a person in the Senate who prevented it from happening. That is just demonstratively false. He had every power in that moment to override that person and put that increased minimum wage in that bill. He chose not to. He, at the southern border, he spent a year demonizing Donald Trump for putting kids in cages. There's still kids in cages down there. Only thing that he's changed is he's no longer separating children from their families. But besides that, everything else is the same. Everything else. On the student loan side, the president has the authority to, at the stroke of a pen, with an executive order, he could eliminate all of student debt if he chose to. Now, he said he wasn't going to do that, but what he did say was he wanted to get rid of at least $10,000 for everyone, as far as student debt was concerned. All he has to do is sign a piece of paper, and that's done. He has not done it. So there's no need to go through Congress for that one. Right. You know, when it comes to healthcare, you know, he said he wanted to add a public option onto Obamacare. He's actually, not only has he not talked about that one single time since he took office in January, they took it off the website just as of last month. So they're not even like putting it out on their website anymore. And there's absolutely no mention of it anywhere in the legislation that he's proposed for the next 2 years. And so when I think about Joe Biden, what I think about is he's the beneficiary of the person who ran against Donald Trump. We were all so like ready to get Trump out, and we needed to get Trump out that, you know, basically anybody could have gone in there. And now Joe Biden's in there and he's barely doing anything that he said he was going to do, but he's going to get a pass because he's better than Trump. And honestly,
but will he though?
I think he will. I think he will, because at the end of the day, you know, our media is overly friendly to Democrats. I mean, that is just the facts. They really are. And it bothers me because in my mind, and maybe you can call me an idealist, but I think that when you tell people that this is what you're going to do when you get in office, now please vote for me, and then people vote for you, you should at least attempt. I mean, attempt. Like maybe, you know, something gets hung up in the Senate. You can't control that. Maybe something gets challenged in courts. You can't control that, but you got to try. I'm not seeing Joe Biden try. And as far as I'm concerned, when he comes back, you know, to ask for my vote again in 2024, I'm a little less, you know, like on board with it.
I don't think he is, though. I don't think he is. I really feel that, and I agree with you on some things. I do feel, though, just back when Bush was dealing with Al Gore, who was trying to debate the vote as well. Yeah, you had this delay and things are happening and you don't have information. And I would say this, you know, even though President Biden's been in the office and he understands what goes on, unlike other presidents, he's been in politics for so long, he knows it's not going to be easy and there's always more to it. I give a slight, let me wait and see until January hits. Let me give you this full year, because one, it started with turmoil. Yeah. Two, at the end of the day, if you didn't take care of COVID in some kind of way, if you didn't tell us something you were going to do, we didn't want to hear anything else.
Right.
I mean, we did and we didn't. And so with that being still lingering and dealing with it, people wanted that to happen, and I feel that yes, there's still children locked in cages. There's still issues going on. You weighed heavily on the black vote. You've made some Joe's that uncle that shouldn't talk or shouldn't like uncle. Don't say nothing, Uncle Joe. Just don't. You talking out the side of your neck when he says things about if you're not black, you don't. If you're not black, you don't vote for me. Like don't do that, Joe. Like, sir, like what are you doing? Disappointment in just the diarrhea of the mouth.
Yeah.
But I will say, and I give every president the grace of, I have no idea when they hand you that binder what you're getting. I don't know what you're getting. And I've never sat in that seat, so I don't know. So I give everyone about a year and a half to say what's going on. But, the minimum wage thing, the student debt thing, all of these things. And then just the other day, he called out 2 people in Senate for holding things up. You know what I mean? And as we know, there have to be agreed. There has to be a vote. All those things. How much power does he really have to get certain things done? And figuring out where do I lay this power at the time? Where do I say things need to happen? Do I do this or do I do that? And I'm still dealing with someone saying, you're not president. I'm still going to sue and fight and try to get this seat. I think Trump said the other day, I'll be president again in August. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I don't know. So I agree with you fully. And unfortunately, there wasn't anyone strong on either side of the party, even independent, besides not just Republican, Democrat, I'm talking about Green, all those that were strong enough to take and get the vote to go against Trump. Who do we have? We spent so many years fighting that no one was building themselves up to be the next person to take the seat. Republicans had no one. Democrats, Biden only got it because he was vice president to Obama. You know what I mean?
I have some thoughts on that one, but that's
What's your
actually,
thoughts?
I mean, firstly, I want to say that I also want to be fair to the president, but I'm not evaluating him on like the wish factor, like, oh, I wish he would do these things, or I wish he would, I'm not trying to I'm not like a kid with a wish list trying to say like, this is how I see the world and this is what I think the president should do about it. I'm not evaluating him like that. I'm evaluating him on what do you have power to do, and then what did you do with that power. So if he can't by himself add a public option to our healthcare system, he can't do that. But what he can do is he can talk about it, and he can continuously ask the people in the Senate to put forth legislation about it, because he said he was going to. Now, do they have to do that afterwards? No. But doing that is doing the most that he can do. And at least that way he's keeping it in the national conversation, which is a really big deal, and with the student debts thing, like that is 100% within his power. You don't need Congress for that. He could do that tomorrow.
I need him to do that today.
Yeah.
I need him to do that 5 hours ago. That should even happen.
If he wanted to cancel,
sir, what are you doing?
If he wanted to cancel everyone's federal student debt, he could do that right now. He don't need Congress for any of that. So whenever someone tells you like, oh, well, he can't do that, he can. And so these are the things that, bother me, not because I'm telling him what he should do with his presidency, but rather he said he was going to do it and now he's not doing it. Right. So that's kind of where I was falling at. Now, when it comes to what you were saying otherwise about like, who else was, kind of in a position, you call me a little bit crazy here, but the first season that I did of my podcast, I was covering the primaries like that. My first 20 episodes were all about covering the primaries. I think there were other people who had a legitimate shot. I really do. I mean, I think Bernie Sanders obviously had a legitimate shot to defeat.
I was so disappointed.
And I know people probably aren't thinking, this far back, because we're talking about like the week before the pandemic started, but Joe Biden got blown out in like the first 2 Democratic contests in Iowa and New Hampshire. And then he came in second in Nevada. And then when he won South Carolina by a big margin, And then the media went crazy over the weekend. They spent, because it happened on a Saturday, and the media spent the next 48 hours telling everybody Joe Biden won South Carolina, and so now you got to vote for him. And then on that Tuesday, 3 days later, he won all those states on Super Tuesday. And I did an episode on this about 3 days after the fact. I went and read all the exit polls that CNN put out, and the craziest thing that I saw is that more than half of the people who voted on Super Tuesday said that they decided who they were going to vote for within the last 3 days. So, which meant that half the people who voted on Super Tuesday saw Joe Biden win South Carolina, heard the media tell them that because Joe Biden won South Carolina, they had to vote for him, and then they did. That is wild to me. That's wild to me.
That goes back to what we're talking about, where people do not do their own anymore.
Right.
I really feel that we are more politically aware now more than ever, because we were sitting at home in 2020 and we were actually seeing things that didn't make sense across the board. Like that, what is that? So you're doing your own research. You're trying to figure out, like, hold on, wait a minute. What are y'all talking about? And we're no longer voting because that's how my family votes, or I'm just going to vote straight down this, straight down that. We're now actually asking questions. And at the end of the day, the issues that we are facing in society on the smallest level is how you vote in your local elections.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing. We're mad about Biden not doing what he says he's going to do. Yes, it's only June. I'm trying to hold out and see what happens to the rest of the year. But at the end of the day, have you voted for a city council person? Have you voted for your governor? I am in Texas.
Yeah.
That alone should tell you. That president shit right now is the least of my worries. I am in Texas. And that alone, look at your local. People feel what you feel, think what you think. But we had council elections here last year in November, same thing. And we are a community of, I think, 120 during the day. At night, like once everybody come home from work or whatever, it's like 90,000 people in my city. These council people, when it comes to school board, city council, 200 people, 300 people voting. Like out of everyone in the city, each person only getting about 200 votes or 100 votes or 300 votes. What's that tell you?
Tells me enough, honestly. I mean, like, I recently did some episodes myself with some local politicians. One guy who's running for mayor, another one who's running for city council. And yeah, even in a state like this where we do have like higher than normal like voter turnout, it's still under 50%, for these local elections. I mean, it doesn't make any sense because like these people are the people who directly affect us the most. I mean, people like who are in your city council, who are your mayor. I mean, they are determining how much money your schools are getting. They're determining what businesses are coming into your community. They're determining who gets elected to your police like commissioner.
I was about to say that. Absolutely.
Or your police captain. Your local district attorney. They're the ones who, prosecute people. I mean, they're the ones that, when you think about like Louisville, for instance, when that Breonna Turner, Breonna, wow, I can't believe I messed up her name there for a second. Breonna Taylor. But when that happened in Louisville, I mean, everyone was screaming for those cops to be arrested. But I'm over here thinking to myself, like, if you're upset with the way that district attorney handled that, then you need to vote that district attorney out because that's on them, right? I mean, that they have direct ability to prosecute those police officers. They chose not to. That's an elected official. You can get that person out of their next cycle, and like these are the pieces of power that we have that we don't utilize enough. And I feel like that's one of the things that I wanted to focus on when I started doing this podcast was I felt like there's a lot of people who just don't know that just how impactful these things are and how much power we could wield, but it's just not being utilized. Like people don't realize how much influence they could have, especially in the local level. Because like you were saying, 300 people getting 300 votes for one city council person in a town that has close to 100,000. That don't make no sense.
And the sad thing is this, So many people, I noticed last election in November when we were voting, they're really now like, okay, I need to figure out my district. I need to figure out this. Am I still registered? Like all these questions. That means you're not keeping up with it, right? You have no idea. You move, you didn't change it. When you move, you let people know when you're voting and you're registered to vote and you move, your zip code can determine your district and where you vote. You have to change that information. People would come in and ask, who's my council person? Oh, okay. So you mean to tell me all these years you've lived here and they do 2 terms. You live in the area for how long and you had no idea who your council person was? But
You
you're
know what?
complaining about your streets, you're complaining about your parks, you're complaining about certain things.
Yeah. And you know what? I feel like a lot of people, when you ask them those questions, I mean, it just comes down to the fact that people are just disengaged with what's going on. You know, again, they're just not paying attention to what's going on. They feel like they don't have any power. They feel like they have no control over these things. They feel like, oh, these are just things that are way above me. You know, and that's one of the spaces that I wanted to occupy, because I realized that there is this, not like an education gap, but just like a general knowledge gap. Like most people don't realize how much power they have over these situations. And I felt like somebody has to be communicating these things. And so I was like, maybe that's my role. You know, because we talked about earlier about maybe you're the person who's on the podium, maybe you're the person who gives out the flyers, right?
Yeah.
I was like, maybe that's my role. That's my podcast role. Like, let's find a way to just give people extra knowledge that they did not have about what's going on in the world around them. And hopefully that will inspire them to use that, you know, knowledge, that influence in whatever way they want to. Because I always feel like people, they feel empowered when they learn something, you know, especially that can directly benefit their lives. And so for me, that's always very impactful when, you know, someone tells me like, oh, I really learned something when I listened to your podcast. And I was like, you know what? That is all I need from this, honestly. You know, like that means everything to me.
And I think, and I appreciate what you're doing, because you're bringing, podcasting is still new for a lot of people. They still don't know what's that talk radio, what's that thing? You know, they're trying to figure out what it is.
I mean, it's
And
basically radio.
I like, yeah, you know, but I like the fact that what you're doing drives someone to dig deeper. You're not giving them everything, because I don't believe in spoon feeding certain things. I want you to take this, and hopefully it's a catalyst for you to let me look a little deeper. And what I will say, in a positive of having the previous administration in office, it made everyone more aware politically, made everyone say, let me look into this. Let me figure things out. Even if you agreed or disagreed, to me, it made everyone want to have a voice and speak up and try to figure out what that voice happens to be. Try to figure out, what can I do because of whatever that may be. That's the positive to me of the last 4 years, and also COVID making many of us sit down and focus, because you know, when you're on the go, you don't want to hear it, you click it off, you switch the channel, you walk away, you tune it out. And so many of us surround ourselves with people who are too like-minded, and they don't stretch you to go beyond that bubble. And I think it was everywhere. Your phone, the computer, everything was consuming. It was a ticket line at the bottom of the screen. You had to see it. You had to inquire about it. So I think, like you said, we were exhausted. We wanted something just different. And January 6th, I think, kind of made it like, I told y'all, see this foolishness? This is this. And you have folks who are letting them in, who are in, you know, like January 6th kind of set the bar for, do you see what we're talking about? The importance of the power of your words, the power of what you're saying. So, yeah. So, anything you want to ask me?
Yeah.
Oh,
no. I kind of like, I paused there for a second, but you know, when you're trying to think, you know, personally, like, you know, like I want to bring a certain person on my podcast, you know, what is it that you're looking for, you know, as far as like as far as like a particular conversations that you want to have? Because I know you want to have meaningful conversations, but meaningful in what way?
So I think I'm backwards in my process because I tend to think about what do I want this season to feel like.
Okay.
And like for me, I base the show on three main things, three buckets: relationships that can be anything, society, culture, health, and wellness. That can be all of that all together. My thing is, if I want to discuss, relationships, I'll probably have people who are experts in that department, a therapist, to help kind of bring proper guidance. I only want to have people on that kind of mirror my values. I'm not going to have anyone on who goes too astray from what I do. So, because I want to have a good conversation. I may think you have great content, but if the way you go about it is disruptive, I won't have you on the show.
Right.
I may support you, but I wouldn't have you on the show. I may know someone that may be a better fit because I know my audience so far, they know they're going to get meaningful, calm. It may be uncomfortable sometimes, but it's not disruptive conversation. So I really am particular about who is on. I've never had to trash a show like it's not happening yet.
Yeah.
Because everything's been, I lay it out like, okay, this is how this goes. It's like a conversation. You can speak freely, certain things I don't want to hear, certain terms or slang, just because that's not how I speak. Just respect my platform. I respect yours. But for me, I tend to plan out my season. Like the next season I want to do is going to be based on society and how we are in society. So I will try my best to think about what each show needs to be to kind of tell a story as the season progresses and what that will look like. And then I go from there. And I think about guests that I've seen on other shows, reach out to them. Like, I loved who you had. I may reach out to someone, that's how I do that.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I've been kind of getting more in the whole like trying to just whoever wants to come on, I just let them come on. So I definitely don't have that kind of a situation.
I don't do that.
Yeah. I've
No.
been lucky so far that the people who I've had on, we've had nothing but good conversations, but I'm kind of thinking that eventually that's going to come back to bite me a little bit. But, I do like, for me on my podcast, I like the fact that I kind of have it set up to where it's half the news and then half just like a brand new conversation. Cause I feel as though as I'm trying to address these topics that are very important in our society, I also like to have there, again, just be a little bit of variety because you never know what, kind of conversations can come up when you're bringing on different people all the time. And I feel like some people just really want to have that diversity in content. I'm sure some people want that straight line through the same conversation the whole way, but I like breaking it up in the middle, just having something brand new. And for, those who are listening to this episode, I'll have that, Arlene and I had a great conversation on my podcast. So definitely go check that out. A lot of people have been loving it so far. I've had nothing but good reviews. So
good. I love it. I try my best to, I'm always honored to be on someone's platform. Like, you want me on? Thank you so much. Because my struggle is what's my expertise? What am I talking about? Like with some people, their wellness, they're this, they're that. That's their podcast, that's their show. So what am I going to bring? I just talk to people. So I really need to stop struggling with that, but I do, because I never know if I'm going to bring what needs to be brought to the show. But I appreciate you because I had a good time. We had a good pre-conversation that didn't get recorded. And that was, so we were recording on his show. Well, we weren't, because we started and we were just, it was so good. It was just so amazing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Desmond paused, like, man, I was like, what happened? I haven't been recording, and it was like 45 minutes in.
Oh my God.
And it was we recovered. We did it, right?
Yeah.
We did. But him and I both know what happened beforehand.
Yeah.
Was like,
we couldn't quite recreate it, but we did. We could.
And it almost happened again today. We were just having a pre-conversation like I do with everyone else.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Are you recording this?" No, you need to record this. Hit record. But that's why I do what I do, because I like making people feel comfortable. And because my whole thing is, I want people to feel as if they've come over, I've cooked an amazing meal, you brought a bottle of something that you like, we're going to sit down here and just talk. Kick our feet up. You need a pillow, get you a pillow, get you a drink, and we're just going to talk and no matter what. And I want people to feel that comfortable and that safe in this space, because I feel that there's so many unsafe spaces that we all get attacked in, be it you're getting attacked by your friends, your family, because I also understand that it may not come out the right way initially. So give me a moment, give me time. And I feel we're all like, what they're gonna say, I'm ready to attack. That's why I'm really big on certain conversations separating men and women.
Yeah.
Because I want the men to feel comfortable to say what they really want to say, and the women to say what they have to say, and the women not like, what's he about to say? And the men like this, I can't talk, but she don't want to shut me down. You know how that is with relationships. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Very few of us are so comfortable in our skin to have this open dialogue. So, but yeah, that's, I hope I answered your question.
No, you did. When it comes to me, I've actually over time learned to, I guess, like, stop caring a little bit. I mean, I think also just doing this podcast, I realize, like, when you're putting out your political beliefs to the world on a weekly basis, like, you have to come to the conclusion that you're going to upset people. Like, that's a fact. I mean, it's going to happen. There's no way against it. And so I had to kind of get over that pretty early. I was just like, I'm going to piss some people off. So I need to just, like, find a way to let it go. Because, part of my process when I'm, marketing this podcast is everyone who follows me on social media, I DM them and I ask them to listen to my episode, and I ask them if they'll give me some feedback, and people give me their feedback. So,
like, damn, I asked that question. Yeah. I should never ask that question.
Yeah, I've heard some feelings. That's for sure. Especially when because I never know what someone's political beliefs are when I first, message them. And so when I had some things to say about Trump, there were some people that didn't take that the right way. So, but those are times we live in. So,
and the thing about it is, I feel that if you're going to support someone or something, everyone's not going to agree with you.
No.
And that's okay. You know what I mean? You have to, and I welcome the difference in opinion. It may sway me. It may let me see things differently. For a very long time, I've told a friend of mine, I said, for a very long time, I thought, is Trump really, is it, maybe something ain't right. I don't know. Does he really feel that way? Or is it just pure? I said, y'all forget he was a reality TV person. Like, is this a show? Because I honestly believe he ran as a joke. No one can tell me this man didn't run as a joke just to see what's going to happen, just to kind of stir the pot. Because he's that person. And when he got far enough and won, I was like, oh shit, because Melina every day looked like, I ain't signed up for this shit. This every day she's like, this is not. Her last day, she got on that helicopter so quick, like, let's go. You know what I mean? So for the longest, I'm thinking to myself, I thought in the Twilight Zone. I said, this is not really happening. He thought, I said, this is what happens when you play games, you joke around too much, you do stuff, and now look at you. Now you're in the seat. And because he's so arrogant and full of himself and wants that limelight, like, oh hell, I'm the president. Like, it sat in, right. I'm the president. Like, okay, I did this. And that just shows you where we were in the world. That people, like you just said, we wanted anyone. After Trump, we wanted anyone. But that just showed you also how sad it was. People were so mad we had President Obama as president that they voted Trump in. It's extreme. We are a joke to the world. Everyone outside of the United States, we are a joke. Y'all are stupid. Y'all are ridiculous. We don't have no problems.
There are so many different layers to what you just talked about. I honestly believe that, when it comes to Trump, he was the beneficiary of a couple different things his first time around. I mean, one of them was that, Fox News spent about a decade straight doing nothing but tearing apart Hillary Clinton. And so when she was running in 2016, when she ran in 2016, it felt like a lot of the vote for Trump was more of an anti-Hillary vote than a pro-Trump vote when it came to those Trump voters. And at the same time, a lot of people who normally would vote for Democrats, they just stayed home because they were like, because Hillary was kind of fake. I mean, she just really wasn't the most genuine person in the world. I remember seeing her coming on stage with Jay-Z and Beyonce, and I saw her just go into interviews with Mary J. Blige. This is somebody who was trying really hard to get the black votes, but somebody who had been in politics for a long time and had not really done a whole lot for the black community, in my opinion. And so a lot of black people in places like Milwaukee, Detroit, Philadelphia, they didn't show up. And those were the three cities that basically kept her from winning and allowed Trump to win. I mean, she could have, if she had turned out more black people in those cities, she would have won. In fact, craziest stat of all was there was over 80,000 ballots in Michigan that left the presidential line blank in 2016. They didn't vote for Hillary or Trump. Yes. Over 80,000 people just filled out every other bubble, but left the top line blank. And Trump won that state by 11,000 votes. So, I mean, that is wild. Just that right there. You know what I'm saying? And so, but yeah, I mean, Trump being in office, I think he also ran as a joke. I honestly, if I'm really digging into it, I think he did it as a way to kind of dig himself out of that bankruptcy that he was in for the umpteenth time.
Everything's a plan.
I think he was doing it as a way to kind of give himself extra promotion. And then when it really caught on, he was like, wait, what? The
same way you were calling out for Obama to reveal certain things, you forget every president gets asked the same thing you must disclose, and you don't want to do it. Well, sir, you can't be the president and not, but he felt, I'm the president, I don't have to answer questions. Sir, you don't really run anything. Sir, what are you talking about?
Yeah. and you're right to call him an entertainer too, because, for my podcast last year, I did an episode on him. And before I did that episode on him, I watched about 6 Trump rallies because I wanted to get a good idea of what exactly is happening. Because you always heard about Trump rallies or this, Trump rallies or that. I wanted to, before I laid my opinion out there, I wanted to be sure that I knew what Trump rallies were. So I watched a bunch of them on YouTube. And it was a comedy show. I mean, for real, he got on stage like he was a comedian and he basically just told jokes and got people to get mad about things, basically lying to them relentlessly. And that was the whole thing. He was up there to entertain people. That was it. It was an entertainment show. He got off his plane, in an airport, in an airplane hangar, playing some patriotic song. And then he gets up there and he waves to the crowd all crazy. And he starts, talking shit about people. Oh, excuse me. I shouldn't be cursing on your podcast.
Oh, but listen, I've already thrown it out there. You are fine.
But yeah, so Trump is just, I never took him seriously. And man, it's an embarrassment on our country that he got elected to be president, because we shouldn't be having reality TV stars anywhere close to the presidency. That really says a lot about us as the people that he even got close. I mean, the second time, we would think that if it was bad enough that it happened in 2016, that he almost found a way to win again in 2020. Like, that's actually, in my opinion, even more of an indictment. That after 4 years of all that, he still almost won the second time. And that is,
yep.
I got
That
no
is
words
scary.
for that. I got no words for
That's
that.
scary. That is scary. That is truly, truly scary. I want to ask you one last thing on the political side of things, and I won't ask any more political things, but it's all current right now. Dr. Fauci
Yeah.
is in the news. How do you feel about what they're discovering, the emails, what's being said? What are your thoughts? What are your actual thoughts on that? And how he handled?
It's interesting. I actually just was on another podcast yesterday talking about this. And from what I saw, I only saw about 10 of them. So I don't want to make it seem like I, went through the internet and I dug up every single email there was to see. I saw about 10. So I read them all. And it seems as though in the beginning of the pandemic, he had more information than he let on. And he did not share all the information that he had. Now you can make some judgments about that. You can say like, well, he didn't want to cause a panic, so he didn't say everything that he knew, or like they were still learning things in real time, so it makes sense that you might think a certain thing on one day and then you might feel a different way the next week, because when you look at the timestamp for all these emails, they were January, February, and March. So I mean, like, when everything got shut down in our country, it was like the second week of March. It was like right after what happened with the NBA. The NBA shut down, and then basically everyone else after that was like, you know what? We shut down everything. And that happened over the course of like a week, right? And so it feels like I want to give him some benefit of the doubt, because like, yeah, all these things that you were seeing were in that early period. But at the same time, when you're in a position of power like that and you have extra information about this and you're not sharing it, that's going to cause a lot of concern, that there's no way around it. At the end of the day, when a whole nation is giving you their trust and you find out later that you were withholding information, there's going to be repercussions for that. There's going to be.
I agree. And I also feel that we are a society that demands answers, and we want the answer right now.
Yeah.
And I feel that no matter what, there was going to be a backlash, because I was talking to someone about this the other day, and he was complaining about Fauci. And I said, listen, we here in the United States have the audacity. We have the audacity. Oh, I don't care what. We have the unmentionable audacity. We are like, I want to answer right now. Tell me what you need me to do. Do you really feel you could have told us? I don't know. What you mean? We have the. I want an answer right now, because we saw Italy be shut down. We saw people in China get shut. We saw on the news everyone else who was battling before we were, which we were probably battling a whole lot at the same time,
right?
Not leaving their home. It's like, how dare you? You're not doing that to us, because we have. How dare you? How dare you? So I feel that all of us, we want to blame someone. We want to pinpoint something. And I feel that the reality is, in anything when it comes, I'm not a medical person. I have no idea. I'm not taking sides, because I agree. You're withholding information. But I also understand who the president was at the time, who didn't believe it himself,
right?
Made fun of it himself. So how do you go against someone who has such support and say, no, you're wrong? He was firing people when he got into office left and right? So how much listening will anyone do? And I also understand that when it comes to things you don't know, you don't know. And you can't tell us in America, United States, you don't know? How do you not know? You better tell me what to do. Like the masks are not going to work. You had to tell us something to protect ourselves. You couldn't tell somebody, sorry, nothing. It would have been melee. It would have been chaos in the streets more than it was now. It wouldn't have been just toilet paper and water missing and sanitizer. I just think that, and I agree. I agree. I agree that he was withholding something. I think everyone withheld something. I feel that no one's hands are clean when it comes to when they found things out across the board. But I
Right.
also feel we're at the point now we're trying to blame someone. Because
Yeah.
all of a sudden, this administration has taken over, and all of a sudden, all these things are coming out of misnumbering, misinformation, and it's like for me, I'm like, whoa, what is coming out now? What's going on? What's happening? You wanted a vaccine, they gave it to you. What you mad about? Now you ain't got to wear a mask. What you mad about? Like I'm trying to figure out what's happening. Some people didn't believe it, some people did. So like, what are you talking? What's going on?
Yeah, I think that for some people, I guess I'm going to throw myself in this camp. My whole thing is, are you, doing the appropriate thing at the appropriate time? And so for me in particular, I was having this conversation again with somebody yesterday. And, one of the things that came up in those emails was the possibility that the virus itself might be man-made. And now
I saw that.
And so Dr. Fauci has said that there was no chance that is the case. Right now, in the email, someone had said to him that they thought it might be man-made. Right. And so a lot of people are getting upset because they'll say, well, Dr. Fauci had that information, but then he continued to say that it wasn't. And in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, just because somebody tells me that something might be a certain way doesn't mean that it is. Right. It doesn't mean that I haven't already determined for myself that it's not, right? And when I hear people complain about that, they're like, oh, well, he heard it might be man-made, but he didn't do anything about that. In my mind, in defense of Dr. Fauci, when the pandemic first started, honestly, that's not the appropriate time. Like whether the virus is man-made or not, you still have to deal with the fact that the virus is here and we got to deal with it now. And so in my mind, that's not the appropriate time to address that issue. I think it's the appropriate time to address it now. But it wasn't like a year and a half ago. I mean, no. But and
what would it do? Doing it then, like you said,
yeah.
Why that's not the point. Like we need to, just like I said, okay, but you want an answer. Does it matter that someone said, I think it's man-made? Okay, still, how do we what do we do?
How do we deal with it?
It doesn't matter man-made or not, it's here. So what do we have to do about it now? I can figure that part out later on, but we need to figure out now because people are losing their minds. We can't travel. We're shutting it down. What's happening?
Right.
And then, you can't tell us that though.
Right. And I think the only thing that I was upset about when it came to information that was withheld was in the beginning of the pandemic, he told people that he did not believe that masks were necessary. We came to find out later that he lied about it, but that the reason for the lie was that there was a shortage of masks available in the country, and they thought that it was important that all the healthcare workers in the country had the mask because they needed it the most because they were going to be in the most contact with people who were going, into the hospital for COVID-related symptoms. Now, that makes 100% sense. And my whole thing is, you could have just said that. Like, you should trust the people. Just trust people with that information. But instead, you lied about it and said that, oh, masks aren't important. And then you turn around like 3 weeks later and you're like, psych, masks are important. That just to me, that undermines your authority.
And I think I agree with you because it was handled poorly. But the audacity of us, because as soon as we said we need a mask, people bought up every mask and the hospitals had nothing. They had no supplies and people had a garage full of sanitizer and masks and was hoarding it. And it was almost like we have to all survive. Can we work together? Because you had people now who are essential who were never essential. Not just medical care, grocery store workers, fast food workers, people who drive Uber, all these things, law enforcement who still have to work. So people got crazy. And unfortunately, that's what we do because we live in overabundance. We're a society that has always had. We have homeless, we don't give to them, but we live in overabundance, and I need to take care of me. I'm going to buy everything I need to buy to keep me in my house and forget everyone else, and then be mad because you said something different. And unfortunately, it didn't help. Unfortunately, people still went crazy and still did things. And I think I agree with you. It was handled poorly.
Yeah.
But, considering we forget we've had pandemics before and how to handle them, look at your history, look at how we've handled things before. But we're a society right now of, damn it, you better have an answer for me. You just can't tell me, sit down. I want to answer right now. And we were demanding those things. I think it was poorly across the board. The emails can be seen so many ways. Can be like, that's messed up. I see why you did it, but it's messed up. And it has to be addressed going forward, because now, if anything happens again, he's not trusted.
Right. Well, I think in a way he's already kind of damaged the trust a little bit. But, honestly, he was really kind of put into a situation where he could never win anyway. I mean, and that has been on President Trump. I put that on him. I'm continuing to put it on President Biden now, because, he's just a member of this, of the CDC. He's a government employee, and the presidents have been pushing him out in front of the cameras and being like, hey, go talk to the people, get them off our back, and that's just not he's a scientist, works in a laboratory. Like this isn't really what he's supposed to be doing. He's not supposed to be in front of the camera, trying to like calm down the nation, And so I think that it's been just like, it was a mistake to kind of turn him into like a celebrity the way that basically Trump, did, and the way that is continuing on now. So, having those press, briefings every single day, I think those were necessary, but it should have been like Trump or Pence or somebody who was given those speeches, not, like your regular, government employee who's just trying to figure out, like how exactly does this virus, transmit.
Right. And when you have someone in office who doesn't understand that's the protocol and how things should go, because he loves the attention, I'm going to put whoever I want in front.
Yeah.
At some point, he's not listening to anyone, because Pence has been he's a career politician. Like him or not, don't like him. I don't want him to ever be president, because his views are whatever. But I think after January 6th, he's like this. I'm done with all of you. Like I seriously think about it, because as much as he has messed up views, that when Pence had to say something, I'd rather hear what he had to say. I know he's going to at least try to put together, even though he's disrespectful with women and all those things, at least I know it's going to be put together with some type of sense. You know what I mean?
Right.
And after January 6th, he was like, have you seen Pence? Have y'all heard from Pence? Pence was like, man, he wouldn't listen to me. He was that big. Y'all put me here. He would never listen. I'm done. After January 6th, I am done. This man almost got me killed. I'm done.
Yeah. And, in real time, you're displaying what I was talking about at the beginning of this episode, where I was like, Trump has lowered the bar so much that you're over here giving Mike Pence a bunch of oh, Mike Pence, at least you can form sentences. At least
I hate myself. I hear me and I'm mad about it. But that's where I got to when it came to debates. Right. And I had to hear. I was so mad at Biden and Trump at that debate. And I was like, God. And so when Pence and Kamala Harris had a debate, at least, even though it was insults and sly and shade and foolishness, at least it wasn't that nonsense. You know what I mean? It had its moments, but it was much more bearable. And that's where we are. I can bear this more than I can bear that. That's where we are, unfortunately. Right. And I focus on. Go ahead.
And I think if I was going to find a way to end a conversation, wrapped around politics, I would say to everyone, because of the fact that Donald Trump was who he was, and now we have Joe Biden in the office, like, I don't think it's a good idea for everyone to kind of create this new reality where if Biden does literally only one or two things over the course of 4 years, we all dap him up, give him a handshake, and be like, "Oh, you were a great president," because we're comparing him to the last person. We shouldn't let that bar stay that low. And I think if we keep it that low, it's only going to incentivize the next president, the one after this one, and the one after that, that they only have to do the bare minimum to make us happy, and that's not good enough. We have too many things wrong in this country for us to be so satisfied by so little.
I fully agree with you. And I must say, this has been an amazing conversation. I'm so glad you finally came to the table. I'm so glad you're finally here. I know, right? I'm so glad. I want to say thank you so much for creating your platform, creating the conversations, making people think independently out of what they've been taught, what they've been told for many years, and hopefully see things in a different light. I thank you for creating Independent Thought Podcast. Please tell everyone where we can find you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. You can find me on Instagram at Independent Thought and on Twitter also at Independent Thought. As far as my podcast is concerned, it's basically everywhere. I mean, just anywhere you listen to your podcast, you can find me. Apple, Spotify, Google, you name it, I'm on there. And yeah, I put out episodes basically every single week, usually on Mondays. Hit the subscribe button. You'll never miss anything.
Awesome. Everyone, please make sure you follow Independent Thought. It's amazing. It's on YouTube as well. Everywhere you can find a podcast, where you can find the show. I will make sure all of the information is in the show description. And also make sure you follow me, Early Mango, and Shall You Proceed Podcast. I am everywhere you can find a podcast. Find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I am TikToking, y'all. Bless my heart. Yeah, it's a lot for me. But make sure I drop shows every Tuesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being here, Desmond.